welcome back to the channel. This is Dina's Thread. Today on the channel, we'll be learning how to make this trendy asymmetric corporate top with cape and a slitted sleeve. If this is something that you're interested in, keep watching. If you're yet to subscribe to the channel, do well to subscribe, and as well give this video a thumbs up. Let's get started. So to start off, I've gone ahead to mark all my basic lines, my vertical lines. And then for the neck width, I use 3.5 inches. And the neck depth for the front, I'm using 3 inches, which I just went ahead to mark. Now, the next thing you want to indicate is your bust band line, okay? That's the difference from one nipple to the other. You're going to divide that by 2 and then mark it down. Note that the paper I'm using here, my pattern is folded into 2 for this tutorial, okay? Because we're going to have both sides. So we want to fold our paper so that we can get everything. So after marking this down, the next thing I'll do is to go over to my under bust line, and I'm going to mark 1 inch going towards the sides on both ends of the line, which I just marked. Then from my waist area, I'm going to come down by 4 inches and I'm making mark there. So that's where the dart is going to stop, and I just connect. So I used my pencil to indicate the bust line firstly, and I'm using my marker to indicate the dart intake I'm taking for this. I hope you understand this. So next I'm doing is to just connect this to the bust point line using the curved part of my row. So your dart intake totally depends on the size of the bust for yourself or whoever you're making the dress for. Okay, so take note of that. So the next thing I'll do is to come over to the armhole area. Following the curve I have here, I'm going to get the midpoint of this curve here, and then I'll connect it to the bust point line also. So watch how I'm connecting this using the curved part of my row. So you can see that the bust is already forming. Now I'm going to take an armhole dart of 1/2 inch on both sides of that line which I just ruled. So you take it 1/2 inch at the top and 1/2 inch at the base, and then you go ahead and connect it also to meet that bust point line on both sides, as you can see me doing. So make sure that the lines you have, they are not pointy. You don't want pointy lines, okay? So the next thing I want to do is to extend the line so that it matches. By the time we're stitching this together, one isn't longer. So you notice that the one I extended is the last line which I have there. And then I'm going to make an adjustment for a new armhole curve right there. So now that we have this, I'll go on and place the horizontal measurement, starting with the quarter of my round bust. Then I'm going to mark the dart intake I have there, which is 1 inch, and also a stitching allowance of 1.5 inches to 2 inches, depending on how much allowance you want inside. So after doing that, go over to the waist, repeat the same process. Take quarter of your round waist measurement. The dart intake you have there. Remember, we didn't take a dart, but you can see that from the shape we have there, we're going to be cutting out something from the waist. So go ahead and measure what you have there. Replace it back and also add your seam allowance. Repeat the same thing around the full length. Take your quarter of your round hip and then your seam allowance. So whatever seam allowance you're using at any point, it has to reflect on both sides. So you want to go ahead and repeat what you have here on the other side so that they are matching. Now I've done that and you can see what I have here right now. The reason why we did this drafting again is because both sides are actually different, and you want to make sure that as you're working on this kind of top where we have asymmetric necklines, you want to make sure that you're drafting for the other side also, because you're going to have one with the shoulder and one without the shoulder. Okay, you can see that from our intro video. So you want to ensure that you're doing this the right way it should be, right? So make sure that you take your measurements, you cross-check everything, ensuring that they both match on both sides of it. So this was me actually taking the under bust measurement. I didn't take it initially. I just took straight to the waist. So I took the under bust measurement and I'm just making an adjustment to that point, okay? So you want to ensure that both of them, they match very, very well. So now I'm going to indicate the waistline, which I've indicated. From the waistline now, we're going to come down. So you notice that the top isn't so long and it has this shape at the curves of our top. So you want to come down by how long you want that center front to be, okay? So I did that. Now around the dart line, I'm going to come down by how much I want it. You can see that I'm doing it from here. I'm going to repeat on one side, do it on one side, and repeat on the other side also. So please just follow through with what I am doing. Okay, so from the side seam, I came down by 5 inches for this other end. So I'm going to maintain what I have around the dart area. It just means that the slit, so also note that we're creating the slit for this at once. So that will be the opening. So from the waist area, I came down 3 inches and then I connected that to the dart leg and connected it 5 inches to the sides. All right, so I hope you understand that. Now I'm using my marker to make my lines bold so that you can see them clearly. So like I said, whatever you do to one side, you're going to repeat to the other side so that they are matching. So we're just going to do the exact thing we have on this side, we'll repeat it on this other side. So since we have the center for it, you're just going to get that to the dart leg, which you have on this other side, and then you connect it 5 inches below the waist by the sides. I hope you understand that. So you want to make sure that they are matching so that by the time you finish making your top, it comes out looking very nice. You want to ensure that you take your time while doing this. Now, the next thing you want to do is to indicate the left side and then the right side of your shoulder areas. Where do you want the asymmetric to fall to? Towards the right or towards the left? Okay, it totally depends on you, however you want it to be. Mine fell towards the right side. So my right shoulder is where the asymmetric fell to. I don't have like a shoulder at that point. So on the left side is where I have my sleeve. So what I'm going to do is to create a slant coming from my neck width, okay, of the left side towards the armhole area. Okay, just see how I'm using my curve rule to do this. You can just make rough lines firstly and then go ahead and adjust your lines. So I used a pencil because I actually wanted to have a nice line first before going ahead to correct it. So you're going to blend this to meet the armhole you have towards the side you want your symmetric to fall to. Like I said, your symmetric, wherever the position of your symmetric totally depends on your preference. Sometimes I like putting mine on the left, and today I just decided to put mine on the right side. Okay, so that's just simply so you can see the connection that we have there. So I'm trying to close the dart I have here to ensure that it meets perfectly. You know, we're going to stitch that area closed later on. So you want to make sure that both the dart coming from the center piece and that of the side of the right, that they are matching perfectly. If they are not, go back with your markers or your pencil and then adjust that line. You want to ensure that they are matching perfectly. This the little details you have to take note of when you're making this kind of clothes, okay, so that it comes out looking nice and clean. So this is what we have for this piece. So we've already decided where we want the symmetric to fall to, which is the right, and I'm going to just label it on the pattern itself. So since I'm cutting off the upper part, I just indicated it on the pattern itself, and I'll go ahead to cut this out. So this is going to have a side dart. Okay, I didn't indicate that earlier. We're going to have a side dart, so I'm indicating that. So the side dart is usually, I've said that severally on this channel, is usually the difference between your shoulder to waist in front and your shoulder to waist at the back. So for example, my shoulder to waist in front is 16, while my shoulder to waist at the back is 15. So the difference between them is 1 inch. So that's what you're going to use for your side dart. Make sure you measure yours, okay? Don't use mine. Take your own measurement to know that you're doing that properly. So when you finish doing that, you're going to come down from the bust point by 1 inch and then slant that towards where your dart meets the bust area. And that's just it. Okay, you'll be taking up that part. So you can either close it up. Okay, you can see me doing that. I just took it off and then close it up with the tape. And that is just what you should do for yours. So this is what the front pattern looks like. Now moving to the back, I've indicated my lines just like I did for the front. And this is what it looks like. So I just marked 2 inches extra, which will be like for where my zip will sit, but that is not my zip allowance, okay? And I just marked that extra. So for my shoulder to waist at the back, I used my actual measurement, which is 15 inches. Remember, I said that just earlier. So you're going to use your actual shoulder to waist. Now, the reason you're doing this is so that by the time you're stitching the sides together, they are going to match, and also you're going to avoid zip bulge. Now for the neck depth of the back, I used 1.5 inches, also to 3.5 inches, which we used for the width in front is going to match. So go ahead and indicate the midpoint of your armhole and create your armhole curve for the back. So usually the armhole curve of the back is different from that of the front. So next we're going to indicate our dart line. So I'll just extend the chest line which I have here towards this part. So this is the back, so it doesn't really matter. We're going to mark down the bust pan measurement. Please make sure what you use in front is what you're using at the back. Yes, I know there's a presence of the bust, but we're not going to have so much that intake for the back. Okay, so it won't have that effect like that of the front. But make sure that the line, the point where you're marking, if you use 3.5, for example, make sure it's what you're marking at the back also. Now, for that intake for the back, you go over to the waist. For me, I use 0.75 inches on both sides of the line that I have running from the waistline. And then I came down from my waist by 4 inches and then connected that. So we're using a diamond dart, this is a normal dart for the back, but we're going to now create like a curve going towards the armhole. So the back is also going to be on fold. Remember, one side has no shoulder while the other side has a shoulder. So you want to make sure that you're taking notes of these things. After that, go ahead and place your horizontal measurement, your round bust divided by 4, plus your seam allowance, your round waist divided by 4, your dart intake, your seam allowance, your round hip divided by 4, plus your seam allowance, and go ahead and connect them together, just as you can see. So we're going to repeat the same thing on the other side, which I have gone ahead to do. You can see that they are matching perfectly. So make sure to indicate the midpoints of your paper, which I have indicated. Make sure that everything you have on one side matches to the other side. Now, what we're going to do is that from the midpoint of our paper, the zip allowance area, I'm going to come in by 0.75 inches. So this is to help to further snatch in the zip area so that we have a smooth back and our zip is not puffy by the time we finish stitching it down. So we're going to be taking off that part. I hope you understand that. Okay. I just did that around the waist. Now we've not taken our zip allowance yet, so don't get confused. So now I'm going ahead to mark my zip allowance. I'm marking a zip allowance of 1.5 inches. When you get to your waistline and you want to take in your zip allowance, take the zip allowance from that 0.75 inches you went in from the center back, okay, of the waist area. So this is going to be the zip allowance for this point. So whatever you do to this part, remember I said that you're going to repeat to the other part. You need both sides to be matching perfectly so that your dress or your top comes out looking very beautiful. So we're going to repeat the same thing here, 1.5 inches for zip allowance. The reason I'm using 1.5 inches is because I'm going to be turning this with a lining, after which I'll be using 1 inch to stitch. So when I'm turning with my lining, I will use 1/2 inch for that. Now I'm going to bring in the front patterns and I'll place it to my back pattern, right side facing each other. So this will help us to know which side, because for the back, the opposite of the front, it's where the back is going to sit. Okay. So because of this, you want to make sure you indicate that. So you can see me indicating that and using my markers to mark the position. Now I'm going to mark the shoulder area where that stops and also go ahead and mark the armhole area where it stops. You want both of them to match. You get? When you're stitching your sides, you want them to match. When you're stitching the shoulder areas, you want them to match. So you go ahead and indicate that. So after indicating that, after indicating you want to take off your pattern and then go in with a rule to connect from the shoulder area to the armhole area where you mark. So drafting the back is actually quite easy. You just need to follow the step, okay? This is actually quite easy. You just need to follow the steps like I'm explaining them. Okay, if you have any questions, let me know in the comment section and I'll do well to further explain them better to you. So I'll just go ahead and connect. You see me using the pencil firstly to do that, after which I'll go in with my marker. Now, the reason I usually go in with a pencil in this case is because I don't know how, but me ruling straight lines are always a problem. So I just go in with a pencil first to make sure that I have that as good as I want it to be before going in with my markers to correct that line. Okay, so that's just it. So you can see this is what you're going to have. Now, next thing we want to do is to mark the ends. Okay, remember for the front of the side, we came down 5 inches on both sides. So we're going to indicate that on the back pattern also. You come down 5 inches from the waist area around the sides, and you connect it towards the center. So for this one, the back part, we don't need a slit at the back, okay? So you don't need to, shorten the center back at all, except you want to, depending on the kind of style you want to create at the back, okay? So we just went from the side by 5 inches and connected. So you can see that this matches with what we have on the front. So if you place both pieces of the front and the back together, and you notice that the hem of the sides are not matching, you want to adjust. So it didn't match on this other side, and I went ahead to make my adjustment. This is so that because you're going to place them together and stitch, so you want them to match perfectly well. So on the sides, they're actually looking good, and this is okay. So this is what we have for the back. I'll go ahead and label and go in with my scissors to cut it out.
You say you need your space, then pull me close. I read your silence, louder than most. One day you're warm, the next day you're cold. Got me second guessing what I already know. I give you love, but you ration yours. You open up just to close the door, just to close the door. I stay up.
So after cutting for the center back, you'll notice that one side is higher than the other. So what you want to do is to adjust them so that they are matching perfectly. Now I'm gonna head to cut on my pattern. I added half of an inch to the top area. I added half of an inch to the part where my dart is going to sit, to the shoulder area, to the armhole area. You can see the parts where I added that. And I went ahead to cut on both my lining and my main piece of fabric, and I ironed interfacing to both of them. So you're going to iron your interfacing so that it helps to give it structure by the time you put it on. So we're going to start stitching these pieces together. Now, one thing I want to advise you to do is to make sure to notch your underbust point on both your center pieces and the side pieces of the front, and also on your lining pieces. So when you do that, to pin this down, to place them together, you want to start from the underbust where you have those notch points. Make sure that the notch points are matching perfectly, and you go ahead and pin them and stitch them together, starting from the bottom by half of an inch. Now for the back, this is what it looks like. I also added some allowances to the dart areas, to the up areas, and the armhole and the shoulder areas. So I'm going to stitch this also. The back doesn't need, we don't need to notch any part of this. So we just need to place them together, starting from the base, and you stitch. So whatever you repeat on your main piece of fabric, you want to repeat on your lining piece, okay, so that they are matching perfectly. And you go ahead and stitch everything down. So this is what the front looks like. After I finish, I have both the main piece of fabric and the lining piece. So when you finish stitching, iron open your seams perfectly. Now we're going to bring in the main piece of fabric. You're going to place right side to right side, and you're going to stitch it down. So you stitch it down around the shoulders, you stitch it down by the side. So the seam allowance we added was 1.5 inches, okay? I stitched that down, and I went ahead to trim off the excess because we don't want it to be too much. I repeated the same thing on my lining piece, as you can see. So this is what both pieces look like. Now we want to place them together to stitch from the base. So we're going to place them together like so, aligning them from the base. Make sure that when you finish stitching, you always notch and iron open your seam, okay? Especially the dart lines where you joined together. Then go in with your pins and then pin them down, placing them right side to right side. Ensure to place them down properly, and then go ahead and pin. So what we're going to do is to stitch the the bottom, okay, and also the slit area. Okay, so you're going to go ahead and stitch that. So this is what it looks like. I've stitched that fit to the right side, and I'm giving it a very good press. So I'm going to, flip this inside again, and then we're going to stitch another part again. So this part now we're stitching the upper part. So I'm just pinning everything down around the upper part down. Now remember that the upper part has a slit. Sorry, it has a cape, and you have a part where the cape is dropping, like it's draping. So you're going to go from that side of the off shoulder, the armhole of the off shoulder, you go out 2 inches on both sides, and then go ahead and stitch from that point to the other side. Okay. So now we want to draft out the cape, and we're going to be flipping everything to the right side. So make sure to indicate your zipper point where it ends. Remember what we marked for the zipper was 1.5 inches, and we've not turned the zipper area yet. So we're going to indicate that 1.5 inches. This is actually for the back, the center back. This is the center back with the shoulder area. And you're going to just trace that point. So you're going to trace from the zip point to the shoulder area for the part with the shoulder. That's for the center back to the part with the shoulder. Next, you want to indicate how wide you want your cape to be. I actually used 3.5 inches for mine, and I marked that and I'm connecting it. So we're going to be drafting this cape one by one. Okay. So starting off, we're marking the center back of that with the shoulder. Okay. I'll do that and I measured to make sure that it matched. The next thing you want to do is to indicate with an arrow, indicate the upper part and also indicate the part going towards the side, which is the part where we meet to the other shoulder. So next we are going to now mark from the shoulder point of the front. Now we're going towards the front. We're going to measure to the other part where the off shoulder starts from. Okay, where you've already stitched close, where your drape is going to start from. So you're going to now measure that. So you can see that I'm tracing what I have around that neck. The reason why we're using this pattern, like tracing it out, is because that part isn't straight. We can go ahead to just cut out a straight fabric and cut it out and fix it. But because it's not straight, it's going to, have some issues trying to fix that. And you want to make sure that this aligns. So make sure you're using the same 3.5 inches which you use for the other width of the cape. Use that to connect. After which you want to indicate with your arrows again. So you can see me indicating. It means that this part are going to meet and this is the upper part. Okay. Now we want to measure the drape part. We're going to have the part that is draping. So the drape depends on how much you want it to drape. So for the first part, remember, it's going to meet at the middle and then it has another part draping from the back, okay, coming to meet that front drape again. So for the first one, which is attached to the front area, I marked 8 inches and I used the same width which I used for the other one I indicated with my arrows. Now we've marked 2. So what is left is the last one. So we're going to mark this last one, which is the part of the off shoulder. Remember the center back of the off shoulder area. Remember to indicate where your zip is going to sit because you don't want to mark this coming from the zipper area. So you're going to indicate that towards the point where your drape is supposed to start from. So you're going to indicate that first. Make sure to mark, trace it out properly, and make sure what you have around there is aligning. Make sure your lining and the main piece of the neckline area are matching perfectly. So I'm going to use my pencil to trace out that line to stop at the point where my zipper is going to sit. And then I'm going to mark the width, which is 3.5 inches that I used for the other points. I'll just go ahead and mark that out. So after doing that, you want to mark that out. And then you want to now mark out the drape coming from this other side. So remember I said we have a drape coming from the front side. It comes from where we have the shoulder to the point where we don't have the shoulder, which is the side seam of the off shoulder area. So for this other one now, it's coming from the back. We're going to mark it down. So you're going to use the same length like you used for the other one, which in my case is 8 inches. You're going to use that and then you're going to mark the width and connect it together to get this other point. So we have like 3 different pieces of paper which we're going to be connecting together. Okay. So for the drape area, I actually made the part that will be draped. I made that 4 inches of length. Remember the other points I said 3.5, but for the drape area, I used 4 inches. Okay. So I finished marking this. I finished indicating it. You can simply go ahead and cut out a long piece of fabric and just fit into it, like I said. But I don't think you're going to, it will not be easy for you to work with. But doing it this way, it actually easier to work with. It's just going to, because cutting on your fabric, it's going to like have a form of stretch. So while fixing that along that neckline, it's not going to give you so much issues. Okay. So I'm going to cut this out and then I'll place them together. I'm going to pin them the way they are going to sit. So the parts with the shoulder, you're going to place them together. Use your paper tape, use your pin, whatever you have on you. Use that to glue them together, to hold them down. And then you pin the other paper to the other side. So it's more like it's round from the intro, but it stops around where the zipper ends. Okay, it doesn't cut across the zipper area. So it goes from one point of the zip area to the other point at the zip area, both at the back. So that's just how it is. So we're going to place them down properly. Use your paper gum to stick them together. So this is what I have after doing that. If you look at this properly, you're going to notice curves on this, which is what you're going to have. That's why we didn't cut out a straight piece of fabric. Just go ahead and cut that out. So what I'm going to do is to place this on the pattern on a piece of fabric and cut. So you are to add half inch all around this, which is going to be for allowance. So I didn't add at one point, which I actually forgot. So that made the width of my cape to reduce. But please go ahead to add half of an inch all around your piece of fabric. So this is what it looks like. So another thing you want to do is to indicate the part of the cape. So remember I used 8 inches. 8 plus 8 gives us 16. So we have, the drape area where it's going to drape on the off shoulder. You want to indicate that. So mine is 16 inches in total. And I've gone ahead to iron interfacing on my fabric. Now I'm placing them right side to right side using my pins to hold them down. What we want to do now is to stitch that part where it's going to drape on the off shoulder area. So you want to ensure that you align both pieces together properly and make sure to cut from the same fabric. Okay, make sure to cut from the same fabric for this piece. So I'm going ahead to just measure that out and I'll go ahead and stitch it together by half of an inch and also stitch the sides close. So this is what it looks like after I finish doing that. I've turned it to the right side and I've given it a good press. So when you finish stitching, make sure that you make a notch of about half of an inch so that you have this other part out. Okay, this part we're going to be attaching to the neckline area. So you want to make sure that you have enough space there so that you can start stitching your pieces down. So I'm going to take off the pins I used initially to hold down the neckline so that I can draft out my pattern, and I'll flip everything back to the wrong side and then place the cape inside of it and stitch. So the only part we're not stitching our cape to is the area where we're going to have the drape. That's the off shoulder armhole area where we're going to have our drape. That is the only part we're not stitching the cape to. So I'm going to start from after my zip allowance area to pin this down. So when you're doing this, please ensure that you're placing this properly. And that point where you made your notch, you want to make sure that it matches with where the stitching stops and ends around the off shoulder arm area. Okay, so you can see me placing mine properly. I'm going to place them down, make sure that it's matching perfectly. Make sure that I'm placing the cape in between both my lining and the main piece of fabric. I'm using my pins to hold them down properly. Please ensure that you take your time while you're doing this. Place them down properly, after which you go ahead and stitch together by half of an inch, and also go ahead and stitch your zip area by half inch to close that down. So this is what it looks like after I finished, and I've also gone ahead to give it a really good press. So this came out looking very beautiful. Now we're going to move over to the sleeve. So we just have one sleeve seated at the part where we have the shoulder, in my case, the left side. So you want to just draft out a sleeve. So this is a slitted sleeve. I like saying it's a slitted sleeve. So I just call that a slitted sleeve. So I don't know the proper name for it. If it's a funnel sleeve with a slit, but just know it has a slit. So you want to indicate the full length of your sleeve firstly, and then you're going to add additional inches to that depending on how much, how big you want the end part, which is where the flare and the slit sit, depending on how big you want that point to be. So in my case, the full length of my sleeve is 24. From the tip of my shoulder to the waist is 24 inches. And then I added a few inches. I think I added about 4 inches to that extra. Okay, so that makes it 28 inches in length. Now, the next thing we're doing is going ahead to just draft a basic sleeve. So the upper part is a basic sleeve, and then we have that funnel, flay like, not flay, the funnel fill with the slit at the base. So we've gone ahead to mark that. Now, after drafting my sleeve and attaching it to my piece and wearing the top, I noticed that my sleeve was a bit tight around the elbow areas. Okay, so you want to make sure that you take accurate measurements. You add allowances for your piece so that it sits perfectly on you. You can freely raise your hands. Okay, the dress, the top, or the sleeve isn't holding you back in this case. So next we're going to do is to get the funnel, we're going to indicate your actual wrist line. So mine, like I said, I'm coming up 4 inches from that point. So the tip of my shoulder to my sleeve length is 24. Then I'm going to come up from that point, from that 24 inches, I came up 4 inches. Okay. So now I marked that point. So wherever you come up, make sure to take the round measurement of that point firstly. Now, because I'm drafting directly on my fabric, I added half inch to that point, and then to the full length where everything is going to stop, I'm adding 1 inch. Half inch will serve as the joining to the top, and then the other half inch will be to turn the other part. Now, this everything, the extras I'm adding is simply because I'm drafting directly on my fabric. Now we're going to create the slant for this. So depending on how free, how slanted you want it to be, how much fabric you have left, that's just what you're going to do. So this is what it looks like. I'm just going ahead to cut. So this is actually a simple sleeve. It's just a basic sleeve with a funnel at the base and then the slit. So this is the extra that we're attaching to the sleeve. So what I'm going to do, I went ahead to cut extra for the down part, which will serve as the lining, and I went ahead to cut lining pieces for the upper part. So I'm going to place them this way on the wrong face and stitch by 1 inch. Then I went ahead to turn the sleeve at the base, sorry, at the upper part. Okay, so the base is still open. Now we're going to just place this around our sleeve opening right here and then stitch it together. So we created that sleeve. The next is to attach it to the opening of the armhole and then go ahead and fix the zipper to the center back. So this is the top. We finished doing everything. This brings us to the end of the tutorial. If you have any questions, or let me know in the comment section. If you found this video helpful, also let me know, okay? If you enjoy my tutorials, help me, let me know. And if you're yet to subscribe to the channel, do well to subscribe to the channel, turn on your notification bell so you're notified whenever a new video is uploaded on the channel. Okay, and don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next one.